So it's the 5th of December, 31 years ago, the Budapest Memorandum was signed, shall I say, an infamous memorandum, as a result of which Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons for nothing, for no tangible guarantees. How do you assess that memorandum in hindsight, particularly in the context of the so-called peace talks between the USA and Russia?
Well, the first conclusion is that signing memorandum without guarantees of security, and we gave up the third largest nuclear potential in the world, and as a result, on the paper, we received the so-called assurances. If you read the original text, there's not a single word guarantee there. And even if there were words like guarantee, they would not have been supported by anything, because the American administration said that they were not going to ratify this memorandum. That was at the closed negotiations. I can only quote President Clinton, who basically apologized to the Ukrainian people for having signed that memorandum. Well, we are glad that they apologized, but the fact remains that signing that memorandum without legal guarantees of security for Ukraine basically laid the road to the occupation of Ukraine at that time. There were a lot of Ukrainians who believed then that Russia would try to invade Ukraine and try to restore the Russian Empire, but the world turned a blind eye to that. And starting from 2014, I had to persuade our allies that in the Crimea, these are not some mysterious green men, but regular Russian army. After that came the Georgian war and the refusal to give Ukraine a map for NATO. If miracle happens, I emphasize miracle, and some actual peace negotiations lead to a peace deal, we should never repeat the mistake like the one which was the signing of the Budapest Memorandum. Mr. Portnikov, we should also understand the state of our society and the state of Western societies in that time. The elections had been held, and the candidate with pro-Russian agenda won and even the cautious attempts of Vitaly Kravchuk to move away from Russian. That was the fight between Mr. Kravchuk and Mr. Kuchma. But among them, the Ukrainian citizens opted for Kuchma, who was obviously inclined to coming closer to Russia. Recently, the president of Ukraine said that he would trade security guarantees for NATO. Who wanted NATO at that time? Before 2014, most people in Ukraine did not want Ukraine to be in NATO. Even with the election of Vitaly Kravchuk, it was a choice without a choice. And that situation lasted for about 30 years. Next to me sits the then head of the Parliament of Ukraine, who signed the request to NATO to give us membership in NATO, in spite of the considerable resistance from many MPs, like the Party of Regents and so on. So I don't understand what kind of security guarantees we're talking about if Ukrainians themselves kind of wanted to come closer to Russia. And Americans were logical in that President Bush of the US at one point in time, before the collapse of the Soviet Union, cautioned Ukraine from seceding from the Soviet Union. But Ukraine did not heed that suggestion. We announced our independence, but we failed to provide for our security. Americans wanted to interfere somehow because they knew that there could be a conflict, but they didn't want to be responsible for that because they understood the risks which might come after the collapse of the Soviet Union. I want to add something to that. The historic paradox is that President Kuchma in 2003 adopted the law on the national security of Ukraine, which includes the Ukraine's future membership in NATO. Then President Kuchma comes back from Brazil and goes to Tuzla because at that time Putin had already started this testing operation of capturing Tuzla. So basically the Budapest Memorandum became a foundation for the two superpowers in the world. That was a joint policy, the US and Russia, to make sure that the NPT treaty is not violated. But now the situation is such that a lot of countries who want to get nuclear weapons got a very serious argument in favor of nuclear weapons. They say, well, you want us to join NPT, but Ukraine is without nuclear weapons and it lost 20% of its territory. It was attacked by a nuclear power, so this is a huge historic lesson, but we are paying for this painful lesson. We watch the negotiations about peace on a daily basis. Mr. Yatsenyuk, who and how in the main actors should do it for Ukraine to get an acceptable peace plan? Well, but first I would like to take two questions which came before from the audience. The first one, what the state should do in order for people who have left to come back. I will tell you this, if there are no conditions for a realistic and secure peace, we can speak about anything, universities, economy, institutes, but without security guarantees, people will not come back, and even those who stay will probably decide to leave. This is a key issue. If we speak about the so-called peace talks, I don't think that there are any peace talks in place. For me, this is a kind of a smokescreen. They just go through the motions. This is imitation. Everyone is involved. Russia is playing this game, and all the others either make believe that they enjoy it or they take part in this game. And within this game, we have not approached a realistic peace, not a single millimeter, because what is going on in assistance to Ukraine is related to real peace. What is happening in geopolitics, I mean, additional sanctions, tightening the screws on China and India, that would be about real peace. But in reality, nothing of the above is happening. Instead, there's some kind of spoof negotiations just for Putin to buy time. Mr. Portnikov, I totally agree with this for one reason. There's a lack of understanding. What is peace about if the war is going on? This is primarily about ceasefire. And President Trump from January this year up to the Alaska meeting was trying to persuade Putin to ceasefire. After Alaska, something happened in the mind of Putin, and he started saying that there should be a peace deal first, and part of the peace deal should be about ceasefire. Not a single war in the world ended that way, except for those where certain countries capitulated. So until and unless we have ceasefire in place, all this will be just meaningless back and forth. The US president wants to keep his reputation. That's why everyone is making believe that peace talks are in place. I don't know where this bubble will burst. This is only a matter of time. The final question from me and then from the audience. We have a political crisis in Ukraine. Mr. Yatsenyuk, what do you think should be done by the state, by each and every one of us, to keep unity?
It's $1 billion.
This is $1 billion question, as Americans say. To keep unity, you have to keep it. We have to back up the legitimacy of the institution of presidency. You all read different views about that, about what kind of changes can happen in the Ukrainian system of government. I believe that if the system of presidency in Ukraine will be upended, since the president is commander-in-chief, this will just lead to a repeat of history for Ukrainians. We've been through that. The main thing we have to ensure is the president understands his responsibility vis-a-vis the country. And here we cannot make any mistakes. And the same about the president. He has no right to make a mistake. And in here we have the only difference in our views with Mr. Portnikov as regards the government of national unity. I think that this model is not workable, whereas Mr. Portnikov believes that this model would be quite functional. So this is an issue of keeping political stability, if we can call it that way. It's not even political stability, just the vestiges of manageability and controllability of the state. And point number 3, we have to sort out the issue of finance. There's a $70 billion gap in the budget, and if we fail to bridge this gap, we will never win the war. You cannot win without money. And the final point is what the director of the Aviation Institute said. If everyone does his or her job, we will emerge victorious. I believe that there's no political crisis in Ukraine. There's a crisis of the system of public administration, which started in 2019 after the election of the president. And now people have noticed that this is a crisis. It just has become clear. But for me, it was clear on the day when Zelensky was inaugurated as president of Ukraine. That was a crisis of the government in Ukraine with the subsequent total failure. So the only way for us is to go about is to strengthen the institution of the presidency and the parliament, the forming of a legitimate government by the parliament, and the responsibility and accountability of the government to the parliament, cooperation between the parliament and the government. This is what we mean by this. If we don't like the notion, the government of national unity, you can use the notion of Mikita Paturayev, who is an MP, call it a government of national resilience. That's how a country can operate if it doesn't want to disappear from the map of the world. You think if a government of national unity or resilience is established and different political forces are included, including solidarity and the fatherland, which are headed by the ex-president, ex-prime minister, each of them wants to be a president and continue their career. Do you think it would be workable? No, I want the MPs to nominate people for the government. Whether they will include representatives of solidarity or the fatherland will depend on the results of their coalition talks. If they believe that the deputies from European solidarity or the fatherland, that they are more professional than the servant of the people, that would be efficient. If the servant of the people will continue to insist that they are efficient, they will be held responsible for this. But this will be their responsibility and not the responsibility of 3 or 4 managers who are running our country during the wartime. Well, I have a slightly different vision of this. If we take a look at the composition of the MPs, some 90% of MPs are people who have nothing to do with politics. They were not voted for. People voted for Volodymyr Zelensky, so those people cannot bear political responsibility because they are not politicians a priori. For me, political activity is a profession. People should understand what to do, not just to read, but some of them can't even read. Well, you have a very optimistic view of our government. Well, we have a political debate here now, but we at the same time have questions from the audience. What I'm talking about is the readiness of the servant of the people to undertake responsibility for what they do. They promised it to do so, so why don't they do it 6 years later? But people voted for Zelensky, not for themselves, but they became members of parliament. So basically there's only one person with agency, President Zelensky. Well, formally you are right, but we have to restore the system of legitimate power in the country.
Let's get to the questions. Dear participants, you have 10 minutes to ask questions to Vitaly Portnikov and to Arseniy Yatsenyuk. Please, the girl in the second row. Good evening. I'm Anna, politology student. I have a comment on international guarantees. It's very difficult to believe in them. There is a process of negotiations. As a result, we'll have a paper. Maybe it's written guarantees. Who will fulfill this paper in life? There will be written that coalition will be sent. Who will send it? Maybe it's necessary to build contacts and structures with partners or allies where they will not be able to reject this paper. I believe that currently in the world there are no real international guarantees. They do not exist. We have to think on ceasefire. The ceasefire will allow us to accumulate resources for the next war. International guarantees were functional when the United States promised to defend Europe at any conditions. They do not do this now. They now declare that they are not going to defend Europe and even reduce their presence in NATO mechanisms if Europe do not increase its defense ability. There are no guarantees that Americans will defend Europeans, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland from Russia. What guarantees are you speaking about? There are no international guarantees in the world. The international guarantees were related to the fact that one big nuclear
скажімо так, відповідальності, кордони її союзників. Це закінчилося. Більше ніяких гарантій немає. А існують дві ядерні надпотуги. Ну і друга з половиною – це Китайська Народна Республіка. Все. Або нам вдається для цих країн встановити якісь неможливі для них втрати в разі нападу на нас, або вони нас завойовують.
This could be either we may incur big losses to those countries who are aggressive, or they will win. The guarantees may be effective only in one case when they are supported by specific things. For me, security guarantees is not that the Congress would ratify it in case of attack against Ukraine, the United States would defend Ukraine. Whether they will do it, it's a big question mark. The international security guarantee is the first 10-year as a minimum, clear financial agreement with the obligation of our country's guarantors to finance Ukrainian army. The second, supply very clear amounts of weapons. The third, placement on the territory of Ukraine, missile defense and missiles such as Tomahawk, when our EU allies give us long-distance weapons. It's just real guarantee. The fourth, training centers on the territory of Ukraine, and the fifth would be the military bases of the countries which are guarantors on the territory of Ukraine. You may give an example of Israel, for instance. Between the United States and Israel, there is no ratified by the Congress agreement on providing guarantees or providing military assistance. They have memorandum of understanding, which was signed 10 years ago, not ratified by the Congress, but the United States provides $3 billion annually for the security of Israel. Therefore, guarantees without clear deliverables, things which are in Ukraine, armaments, money, missiles, missile defense, intelligence, there's nothing. When these guarantees are supported by concrete things, these are real guarantees. My name is Tatiana Petrek. I am the postgraduate student in Ternopil. My question is to Vitaly. Is it possible to new international architecture of security while Russia remains in the same form on the map of the world? I don't think that there is an issue of any new international security architecture. After the Helsinki approaches were ruined, Helsinki Agreement was recognized by the Soviet Union, which was in a much serious geographic margins than Russian Federation. This is from what you are saying means that Russian Federation should build a new borders, which is Putin saying. The last question. Sure. Very briefly. My name is Orisa. I'm independent researcher. Question to Arseniy. I fully agree with Vitaly concerning the government of national salvation, as we call it sometimes. But you said about restoration of institutions. What do you mean by this? And who should do this restoration of the institutes? And the second, is there any threat that the managers which are living Zelensky would be substituted by other people and will restore again the situation when everything is ruled by one person? My answer will be very brief. I believe that restoration of renewal of institutions will be possible only after the end of the war and parliamentary and presidential elections. I don't think that now there is a possibility and ability of the current political establishment to restore, to renew institutions. I want the current political establishment to do everything possible for the war to finish at conditions which would Ukraine agree with, and for us after that, for us to have a politically responsible system of public administration in Ukraine. My question would follow up your answer. And concerning the point that Arseniy said that people voted not for members of parliament but for Zelensky. And then Vitaly said that in 1990s people voted for pro-Russian candidates and forces. I have a question. What can we do for people to be more responsible in their choices? Because voting for the members of parliament means getting a
якщо це можливо віднайти. Як зробити так, щоб люди були свідомі в своїх виборі і робили цей вибір, користуючись своїм правом голосу, більш відповідально? Дякую. Питання, хто може, той відповідає.
Ми вже 30 років мучимося.
we've been trying to answer this question for 30 years. When you say that people should be responsible, did people in 2019 voted responsibly? They wanted to vote for people who didn't have positions, biography, and experience in politics because they had to lead the country. Did anyone deceived people? Did anyone said that I was a minister and have a lot of political experience? They said, no, I was not a minister. I didn't have any political experience. Vote for me. And people voted. This is the ideal system of changing corruption. If we cannot exterminate corruption among the members of parliament and ministries, we need to create a system which would change members of parliament. They will change. After they get corrupt, the new ones again will become corrupt. So it will be like moving on the circle. And for people to know where to steal money when now the members of parliament are suspected in organized criminal group. What can we say? It's enough for us to know about current system of public administration, and the member of parliament was organizer of the criminal group. Who would think about it? Everyone could think about it, but didn't think at all. So we are living in the world of new information technologies. People would not be interested in this, and we have to break through to reality in the darkness of these new conditions. In addition, The Guardian published an article on how artificial intelligence could influence political processes. I think that many of you make use of AI. I'm against it because it doesn't agree with me, doesn't want to listen to me. Not to say that it has been making lots of incredible mistakes concerning historic facts or developments, but it started impacting the political conscience of people. Speaking about what Vitaly said, I would say first is critical thinking. If a person doesn't have critical thinking, this person would believe into miracles, and this will end very badly, because when person sees a reality, this comes to bad results. But for having critical thinking, you should have proper level of education, and to have proper level of education, you should get values. Values you get from your parents and from the society. For this, you have free media. Mass media say, stop, this is not round, this is a square, this is not black, this is white. It's very complicated answer, but only this way democracy is being built. I will tell you from my political experience. I came to the podium in the parliament and said, my government is the government of kamikaze. I said, I will raise taxes, I will raise tariffs, I wouldn't raise pensions because I don't have money for this. And for you to know that in 2014 I won the election, it's a historical fact, but not for a long time. But it appeared that even without populist agenda, you could win an election. Another thing, that after you won the election, you should maintain the level of support in order to implement what you wanted. And here we had difficulties, and difficulties were connected to a situation that democracy needs instruments of protection. There are not that many instruments of protection, beginning with independent media and political competition. The last question. Thank you. My name is Eduard. I would like to ask you a question concerning the previous session. In the section, we were told that we lack strategic approach in Ukraine in order to formulate certain policies in the context of rebuilding of Ukraine in a strategic sense after the end of the hostilities. What would be your ideas and principles or concepts on which the rebuilding should take place, or building of new economy, institutions, and so on. Your vision would be very interesting to hear. Frankly speaking, I would wait till the end of the war. I don't know what territory we would have. I don't know how many people we would have on these territories. I don't know which guarantees of security we would have, and on the dependent investment climate. I don't know whether Ukraine join European Union. It's a task with many unknown elements. Otherwise, there's no sense to forecast anything. I can only agree with this. In 2022, they started forming a recovery conference. I had a discussion with wonderful people who said that it's a main issue now. I said, are you saying we have to stop to finish war, and then we would think about how to recover Ukraine? You substitute notions. Instead of calculating how many billions we need to win the war, you start to think what we need when we finish the war. We haven't yet finished this war. Continuing the tradition, I would like you to say a couple of words. This is the end of the year. St. Nicholas Day is approaching. What will be the next year? I don't know. Not easy. Thank you very much for this discussion. A round of applause.